emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and,
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus. You have accessed entry 907.MT0627, certificate number 33392. Patagonian Giants.
You're just stalling now.
You'd like to think that, wouldn't you? You've beaten my giant, which means you're exceptionally strong. So you could have put the poison in your own goblet, trusting on your strength to save you, so I can clearly not choose the wine in front of you. But you've also bested my Spaniard, which means you must have studied. And in studying, you must have learned that man is mortal. So you would have put the poison as far from yourself as possible, so I can clearly not choose the wine in front of me.
How tall are you, for the record?
Well, I was at my tallest 6'3". The last couple of times I went to the doctor, they're telling me that I'm 6'2.5".
They don't have English units in the future, John. How many centimeters tall are you?
1,000.
You are 1,000 centimeters tall. It's about 30 feet, I think. Yeah, I'm having the same thing. I felt like I was kind of plausibly 5'11" for a while. Mm-hmm. And just, if you round up, I was like 5'10.5". And now I'm pretty much 5'10". Gravity does a number on us all, I guess.
It's really infuriating. I argued with the doctor and said that's impossible that I'm 6'2.5".
And there are some things you can argue with a doctor about, like diagnoses and treatment plans. But height, maybe not one of them.
Well, that's the thing. I was like, there's a hole in your floor, or you have not calibrated this properly, and they blew me right off.
What are your experiences with very tall people? I mean, you've recently said on the show that you're planning to go to Japan, but you feel like your tallness will get you in trouble.
But I was in my bandmate was 6'5".
Who's 6'5"?
Sean Nelson. 6'5".
Oh, right. Are you counting the tall hair?
No, the tall hair makes him 6'7".
Sean is a very tall man.
I know a lot of tall people, taller than me. I'm always a little bit unsettled by people taller than me because there are relatively few people taller than me.
Doesn't seem fair.
Well, when they get around me,
who do they think they are?
Well, I just notice it. I notice that there's somebody it feels like they're in my space, even if they're standing 10 feet away.
That's because you have tall privilege.
That's right.
Most people are used to a variety of heads, some higher, some lower than theirs, but you don't have to deal with it much at 6'3".
If I go to a rock concert and there's someone anywhere in the room taller than me, I will, first of all, stand behind them just automatically, and they will infuriate me. They'll enrage me. I want all tall people to stand at the very back of a room.
Sean doesn't strike me. He's pretty diffident. He's not one of these kind of embarrassed, hunched over tall people.
I mean, he hunches, I think, like most of us learn to do, just to try and make yourself slightly smaller.
You think that's almost universal among the talls?
It's really rare that you be 6'4" and stand erect unless you are a military veteran or a sports person.
My college roommate was 6'8".
Wow.
Pushing 6'9" at the time, although I think, he's shrunken an inch or so.
Right.
And he was definitely one of these. Well, first of all, he's everybody's friend because, he was a funny guy, but he's also 6'8" for crying out loud.
Everybody wants a 6'8" friend.
When that guy comes into the room.
Was he an athlete?
He played basketball. You should ask him. He loves when people just see him and then ask if he plays basketball. Have you ever seen numbers on this? How if you're 6'8", There is a 0.07% chance in America that you will play professional basketball.
Really?
1 in every 143, 6'8" or higher.
Will play basketball.
But if by the time you get up to 7 foot, it's like fully 17%.
Because
you have a 1 in...
you're not given another option by grown-ups, right?
By the coach. Well, I mean, you're actively recruited.
Right.
Like you can't, in a high school hallway, 3 people are going to tell you every day you should be on the team if you're not on the team. And the coach is going to really be lobbying. But he was always kind of one of these very like, keep your head down and hope I look 6'6.5" kind of guys, which somebody should tell him it's not going to happen. He's actually the friend I tried out for Jeopardy with. We both passed the test. I think he feels he was too tall for the show.
Yeah, that's right. They were like, have you considered playing basketball?
Kareem has been on Jeopardy, but typically they try to make everybody be the same height. They want the pan across the 3 contestants at the end to not go.
So did they make him stand in a hole, or did they put them the other contestants on
boxes? I think
boxes?
on Celebrity, usually they put the others on boxes. Today they originally they had trapdoors that they could lower people, but people kept falling down.
Right.
You don't want to play a game show in a hole.
No. Break your ankle.
They put everybody else on boxes, but now like the nice short lady can fall off her box. So it's a tough situation.
Don't fall off your box, nice short lady.
Really, everybody should be the same height, and then America would be better.
Yeah, you know what? And that's why I'm voting for Bernie.
He's going to make
everyone the same height. I had back problems a couple of years ago, which I'd avoided most of my life. And as a tall person, you anticipate back problems. Mm-hmm. But when I had this problem, a chiropractor said to me, here's how I want you to stand, right? And gave me some posture stuff. And in standing erect, shoulders back for the first time, really, I actually like protested. I said, you cannot possibly ask me to stand like this.
How did you articulate your disagreement?
Well, I just felt like
it wasn't physically possible to do that all day?
No, not that. That walking into a room, a man my size, shoulders back, head up, is an act of, at least in Seattle, like an act of real defiance. Like you're really alphaing.
You're 6'3", John. For crying out loud.
But
you're not Andre the Giant.
But to stand, I had never stood up like that, mm-hmm. because I felt culturally always that I needed to make myself smaller, and standing up like that and walking around with your head held high, it had an immediate effect on my
creative output.
Well, my mood, right? I felt immediately better. I felt invigorated. I got more air into my lungs.
I believe in all that feedback stuff.
It was really,
if you pretend to be
intense. I still do it.
If you walk like you're in a good mood, you will gradually get into a good mood. I mean, I'm not saying it's a cure for chronic depression, but often that kind of stuff does work.
I was impressed.
Have you ever had an experience with seeing a very tall person?
Yes.
In the wild?
Yes.
And what's it like? Did you take a picture?
No, but really tall people are very impressive.
It's funny because in movies, you don't get it. They'll hire some enormously tall man to play Chewbacca or something. And on the movie, it'll just read like, I guess now that I look at it, he is taller than Han. He's about a head taller than Han Solo. Whereas because you don't have a sense of how you're higher or lower than them. But when you're in person and you see someone at an unexpected elevation, it is like a special effect.
It really is. And yeah, especially if they're proportional, which they mostly are. I mean, you see like real ectomorphs that are super tall, but very thin.
Mm-hmm. That's creepy Slender Man thing they got going.
Which is, it seems like it's kind of, it's a different experience. But when you see someone that's proportionally sized and 7 feet tall,
it's almost like the scale is wrong.
Yeah.
Like you're doing the magic eye thing and they are much closer to you than they should be or something.
It's exciting. I mean, it's just as exciting as seeing someone who's really small. I mean,
it must make faces light up, but if you're that person, you do not want to make faces light up with your stature.
It's, again, a thing where everyone, I think, hopes to go through their normal day, at least, not being singled out.
I once watched, I was at the airport picking up my 6'8" college roommate friend, and he walked off the plane right after Denver Nuggets forward Alex English, and they were roughly the same height. And, you know, I guess I expected my friend Earl to look this tall. But, you know, walking out next to Alex English, I was like, oh, this is like a whole new race of people.
All right. Have you ever been in an airport when a basketball team lands and they all get off and you've got, 25 of these guys?
I hope this happens to me someday. Yeah. I hope to have that joy. Last summer, I was walking in Midtown Manhattan. Mindy and I were on, 46th Street on our way to see something at some theater. I mean, you don't want to be in Times Square of an evening, or maybe possibly ever, unless you love bubblegum shrimp. But so we're walking down this packed sidewalk, and coming at us, just like an apparition in the sea of heads, is another head, just, a foot or two higher than the other heads. And it really is like you don't understand what you're seeing. It's floating on a different plane.
Right.
You're wondering what kind of apparatus or mechanism is involved.
Is it a person sitting on a person?
That's kind of what you're thinking. You're like, well, why is the ground different for him? You don't immediately think that man is 7'4", which you'd think would be Occam's razor.
Right.
You're just so unaccustomed to seeing a 7'6" gentleman walking down 46th Street. And I was kind of, as somebody who occasionally gets a little double take and then a guy whispering to his wife in public, I try not to do it to others.
Yeah.
It's really the only way to generate empathy is to.
I mean, you used to get a little double take
suffering.
And people whispering, but now everywhere you go, people throw confetti at you and say, "It's America's sweetheart, Ken Jennings."
They used to just do it because of my odd affect and odor,
right?
But now they remember me from a quiz show,
right? It wasn't confetti before; it was deodorant.
And so I'm purposely not, making eye contact with this guy or elbowing my wife. And once he passed, two things happened. First, I realized.
He turned around and said, "Are you Ken Jennings?"
I wish. No, the first thing that happened is that I think Mindy had not seen him. And I said, how could you not see him? This guy is 7'5", 7'6", and he just walked by. And she had just, been looking at normal level and had missed the one person.
Interesting.
The second thing I realized is that although he was older and puffier, it was almost certainly 76er center Sean Bradley from the 90s. Space Jam co-star Sean Bradley. This large, gawky Mormon marionette.
So he was a celebrity as well.
Career. I think so. There's just so few 7'5", 7'6" people you might see walking around Midtown. And once he left, I realized, I just saw the 30 for 30 where he's older, and I think that was him. So, and you always choose to believe you saw the celebrity.
Of course.
You're never like, man, that must have been somebody who looked just like Amy Adams. That's no fun. But when you see someone very tall like that, it is nothing like you would expect from an illustration or even looking at the Guinness Book of World Records entry on Robert Wadlow, that 8'11" gentleman from the Midwest or wherever he was from, Ohio, probably.
With the glasses.
With the guy with the glasses. We can all picture him. Mm-hmm. That's one thing to be like, wow, 8 foot, that's very tall. But then you see his shoes and they're the size of a rowboat.
Yes.
Just putting the scale in person is impressive. The range of human heights is not big enough that it's narrow enough that we get very impressed by these comparatively small variations of a foot or two.
Well, and I think that's the average human is within a pretty narrow range, 5 to 6 feet. And
not that other heights are bad.
No, of course not. But people that are much smaller than 5 feet, you kind of think of it as it seems it's more understandable that a human being would not grow to large size.
After all, we were all once that size.
Right. More understandable than that a human would continue to grow so much. And I think extremely tall people are much rarer, at least if you gauge by how often you run into them on the street, than people that are smaller than 4 feet.
And sadly, they become rare as life goes on because often it brings with it its own health problems.
Their hearts can't sustain it.
Yeah, there are physiological and gravitational reasons why, the human frame does not hold up at 7 or 8 or 9 feet as well.
Right.
But as we've pointed out recently on the show, these kinds of things are cultural and can change. Compared to 100 years ago, the average Iranian man is 6 inches taller than he was, just because.
Isn't that astonishing?
He's no longer struggling with malnutrition.
When we were young, the idea of there being a 7 foot tall Chinese person would have seemed like the craziest thing you ever heard. But now they're
The world's most famous Chinese person
Yeah.
is 7 feet tall.
right. But there's so many very tall Chinese now. And I think you're exactly right. It's a combination of macaroni and cheese and tab availability.
And there's a cultural variation in heights, I guess. You know, we are
Serbs are tall. Ethiopians are tall.
a lot of it is cultural. Like if you go by nationality, I think the Dutch are the tallest on earth. The average Dutch man, but still, it's not superheroes. The average Dutch man is 5'10".
Oh, but
that means
Sudanese are tall.
Yeah, so the world's tallest people were really taking it on the chin in the 90s. I mean, the Sudanese civil war between the southern tribes and the Arab majority in the north resulted in, the lost boys of the Sudan, these war orphans that kind of had a diaspora all over the world.
That's the thing. They take it on the chin because that's as high up as their enemies can reach.
You can't even reach their chin. They take it on the sternum. And this kind of variation between races, both for genetic and possibly behavioral, nutritional reasons, must have been known to the ancients because the stories of other tribes, the other guy having giants, are not uncommon.
I always imagined that was related somewhat to the Neanderthals living amongst the Homo sapiens.
Yeah, maybe. It's race memory that goes way back.
Right.
But then it would have been the tall, dumb neighbors.
Hey, as someone with slightly more Neanderthal DNA than your average person.
Is that true? Have you done the test?
Yeah, well, my mom has. We're Old North.
Would you say you are the world's leading Neanderthal podcaster?
Huh, interesting. Maybe the only self-identified Neanderthal. But I don't want to get into this whole Elizabeth Warren fractional Neanderthal thing.
Are you 164th?
Cherokee?
What if Mark Maron was like a Neanderthal? Sad today. Cat's good.
He seems...
Cats play on couch.
No, he seems more of a bonobo.
And it leads up to, biblical stories of, the giants from the book of Genesis, and the Philistines have Goliath. It must be very memorable when you see a tall person, particularly a tall outsider. You might think, well, they're all like this.
Right.
They just breed them like this over in Gath.
Well, certainly thinking about what people in pre-modern or medieval times, especially people that work at medieval times,
they're often very tall.
What your idea of race was. Like, maybe if you lived in Rome, you had some exposure to people from Africa, but probably if you lived in Glasgow, you didn't. So if you saw someone that was tall, you might think that they were a member of a different race of people.
People were certainly very credulous about what the possibilities of human anatomy could hold. I mean, if you read Pliny, for example, he's always just talking, as you often do. He'll often be like, and as we know, the men of Carthage have feathers, and perhaps in Nubia you will see the 8-armed women with the fish gills on their hips.
That was an uncanny Pliny impression.
He talked. I think it might go a little something like this.
Really astonishing. And now the rest of the story.
Yeah, why is Pliny Paul Harvey? But how today we have a very fixed idea of, this is what human variation looks like.
Right.
And in,
eye color, nose size.
All these things were just monocultures back then, and they had no sense of what that spectrum might be like. And that extended into the early modern era of, new frontiers were still being discovered and crossed. And there was really the suspicion and informed by kind of the usual kind of xenophobia, I assume, that we're going to find some real weirdos out there.
Well, even in our own lifetimes. I mean, I remember being fascinated by the pygmies and imagining what it would be like to live in a pygmy culture.
Nothing against National Geographic, but they really traded on this with their, African women with the neck extending collars and, mid-century American kids loved that stuff.
Oh, sure, the plates in the lips and the The blue men.
Inuit people with weird pierced septums or whatever they do. Blue men, exactly. And, we can still appreciate the variety of it. But people were pretty credulous about this, especially in the, as late as the 16th, 17th centuries where we lay our scene, perhaps into the 18th. In 1512, one of the most popular books, a bestseller on the Iberian Peninsula, was a chivalric romance called Prima Leone, which is not read anymore, but it's your kind of typical knight having adventures to win Princess Grisaldia. I can't remember her name.
First Lion, is that what the
I guess Prima Leone. I guess Prima could be cousin lion.
Cousin Lion.
It's an anime. It was an influential book. Don Quixote is believed to have been partially modeled off of Prima Leone by Cervantes. Shakespeare's Caliban is believed to be based on the monsters in the book, because Prima Leone does fight monsters, including a savage kind of dog-faced guy named Patagonian.
Wait a minute.
And this book has been almost forgotten, but one fan was Ferdinand Magellan, who had apparently recently read the book when he began his attempted circumnavigation. Well, I don't know if he was attempting. He was trying to get to the Spice Islands of Asia and decided to come back the other way. So I guess that's a circumnavigation, although he didn't make it.
Did the Amazons appear in like Jason and the Argonauts? Where did we first hear about the Amazons? Yeah, they appear in Greek mythology and clearly are treated by the ancients as a real tribe that exists somewhere and has to, they're super tough. They're a matriarchal society. They're so good with the bow and arrow that I was about to say they're so good they had to cut off a breast. But, I feel like if you were really good, you could do archery with two breasts, like Gina Davis does. Sure. They had invisible lassos.
And invisible airplanes.
Right.
Like Wonder Woman. So that's another
like Wonder Woman.
It's another example of kind of a mysterious tribe that, today we treat as fairy tale characters, but to them would be on the map somewhere. And these people were literally drawn on maps. Maps of Africa would be drawn with Pliny's description of here's where the snake men live and here's where the dog women live, and as if it was an early issue of National Geographic.
And how much of this was just imagination? How much of it was conflated reports?
Yeah, I'm going to say game of telephone.
Yeah.
Because so few people would have actually done the legwork, would have done the discovery, that, they see a strange thing, and by the time they tell the story, and this is what we're going to see a case study of this in Patagonia, the story just keeps getting better and better.
Sure, someone sees a gorilla, and by the time Pliny hears about it, it's a dog woman.
The mountain gorilla was not known by science, in European science, to be a real species until the mid 19th century. I think it was treated as a cryptid, and this is of course the case study you always hear from people who were hoping Bigfoot turns out to be real. Hey, mountain gorillas were fake for a while too, until they weren't. But this is an early Bigfoot story on the American continent. Magellan, as we know, will not complete his voyage around the Earth.
Aww.
He gets credit for it. His first sermon.
He sure does.
Except there was one chief in the Philippines who was not into giving them fruit and converting to Christianity, and had his men kill Magellan.
Yeah, what it was they carried Magellan's scarf around the world.
They had a big cardboard cutout, and they would come ashore and set it up in the dinghy, put it on the beach, take a picture. It's like taking your garden gnome around. As Magellan, but he's still alive at this point in 1520. On his way to Asia, he stops off in South America. He decides to overwinter on the eastern coast of South America, what is today San Julian.
I've done it.
Argentina. Have you wintered?
I've overwintered there.
I mean, it would be our summer, so
nice.
It was between March and August.
Yeah.
But he and his crew spend several months there. Later, by the way, incidentally, 300 years later, it's the same port where Darwin would find an important fossil that turned out to be a megafauna, an ancient kind of giant llama thing of South America that helped him come up with his theory of evolution.
Interesting.
So this is a hop in port. But during their stay there, according to Antonio Pigafetta, I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Andy.
Yeah, we'll call him
Andy Picafetta.
Tony.
Yeah, Tony.
Tony Picafetta, you wanted the pizza pie. He reports later on Darwin's trip that the crew saw on the beach, as they observed from the water, a very tall, naked giant singing and dancing and pouring sand on himself.
It was me.
Is that what you do in South America?
I was pouring coins on my head. He just mistook it for sand.
Do you know what I really enjoy, John?
What do you enjoy, Ken?
I enjoy these addenda entries we've been recording.
Yeah, we just
for
got
the
done.
omnibus.
We just got done doing an addenda, and it really, they really stand on their own.
It's fun because we have managed to create this group of thousands of people who just do the work for us.
Mm-hmm. They all have things they want to add to
They
our
all
shows.
have fun, interesting expertise and stories, and you want to talk back to the podcast, and of course you can't, or you'll look like an idiot on the train. But now they can. They're suggesting their own material, and in the addenda episode, we can share those to an audience in this time period and beyond.
Sometimes we argue with them, but most of the time their additions are relevant and quite interesting.
And we're certainly respectful.
That's right. Well, yeah, mostly.
Mostly.
But they lead us to sometimes go off on a different aspect of an episode we've done.
Yeah, they're kind of freewheeling in a way that, with Omnibus, we're usually trying to get back to the story because we're trying to, finish educating the future on whatever happened to this French foreign minister or whatever. And here, we can just say whatever, and we can just start randomly Googling facts. You wanted to know how long a $5 bill lasted, so we looked it up.
5 years.
4.9 years or something.
But these are available only to people who subscribe to our Patreon, which involves some sort of contribution to the production of the show.
Yes, we have multiple tiers, and at any tier from $5 up, which would be all the tiers, you get immediate access at the end of every month to a new addenda episode, some of which are like getting up to an hour in length.
That's right.
How long was that last one? Was it close to an hour?
Yeah, it was 50 minutes, I think, worth of us going from episode to episode and kind of dealing with our viewer mail.
So a whole new, really a regular-sized bonus omnibus entry every month if you have the resources and choose to support the show. And
at different tiers of our Patreon, you have other benefits, right? Name some benefits at different tiers.
At the $10 tier, you get access to as well as the addenda episode, you get access to our image feed where we post show notes, funny things people have sent us, you and I clowning around.
Our show notes are hilarious.
They're illegible.
Right.
But let's not downplay how good they are, since we do want people to donate.
But there are tons of goofs. Right now I'm sitting here with the Jeopardy trophy greatest of all time. It's sitting for some reason over here on my side of the desk.
For some reason.
And on top of it, it has a little statue of a Basque or Catalonian boy taking a poop. Now, you're not going to know what that symbolizes, what that comes from, unless you're a subscriber. And this is a photograph that we'll post on our image.
At the $20 tier, you get a signed copy of one of our show notes. I have brought a Sharpie, and I'm going to make you sign those today.
Oh, we're going to send them to people in the mail.
Yes, we are sending them out worldwide.
Wow, how exciting.
For them.
Yeah.
And for you, if you like signing things.
I like signing things.
For $50, these high tiers are very aspirational.
Sure, they're specific to people that have a little bit more money to share.
Well, and they're specific to people who could just as easily hear the show for free, but enjoy the feeling of support and community, I guess.
Right.
At the $50 level, you get to choose a show topic that goes to the top of our heap. And we just got our first request today from Krista, who has 2 ideas that she'd like us to do.
I'm excited to hear them.
And at the $100 level, John and I will actually come to your house and do some chores.
Yeah, that's right. I will be a human Roomba.
We will
put me in a closet, and
we will actually do a video chat.
Yeah,
at the $100 level.
That's a lot of money, though.
It really, I don't see, on no level is that worth it. Again, it's just about the feeling of support and community that people feel.
A video chat with somebody? It's probably going to be MC Hammer's kids or somebody that we're going to talk to.
Where would they get the money?
Oh, oof, ouch, MC Hammer burn.
So all the early reports of this voyage, just take it as written, that they had discovered Indians of very brave bodies like giants.
Interesting.
That South America was full of giants. And, not content to just bring word back to Europe, they actually lured, apparently, some of these giants to a nearby island, whereby they gave them food, delighting them, and then gave them a mirror, which scared them.
Sure.
And then gave them a mirror and a food, so their hands were full, and then they put shackles on their legs.
Wow.
So suddenly slavery, and now it's not a fun story anymore.
After they blew up the Death Star, did they give them a medal?
Yeah,
or not?
It wasn't like the fake Chewbacca fetters. Like, this was for real.
So they captured them.
Tossed them in the hold and hoped to take back these giants to Europe to show off, and they called the region. Apparently, the men must have reminded Magellan or somebody on his crew of the monster Patagonian from this beloved romance of the time that all the crew must have been trading around, and so they named the land Patagonia.
So they grabbed these Patagons.
Patagons of justice,
and they threw them in the hold. But they were on their way around the world, so they weren't going to race them back to Europe. They were like, "You're coming with us while we go now to the Philippines."
Yeah, they're dance and throw sand on your head and entertain us. They're treating them as cargo,
sure,
which just kind of shows how broadly our views of humanity have changed. Like when you see a new kind of person, back then the impulse was, oh, thank goodness they're not Christians and all our rules of decorum do not apply. Let's toss these guys in the hold.
Sure.
And so when accounts come, even though the Indians die en route and never make it back to Europe, the Magellan's crew carries back with it these stories of these giant South American men, and this becomes standard knowledge of what South America is like. It is called on maps Regio Gigantum, Kingdom of the Giants.
So they die and they throw them overboard. They don't even keep them.
Yeah, why wouldn't you bring back the skeletons
if they're such a big deal.
Science?
Right.
I guess nobody wants decomposing giants in their hold.
We have to imagine, though, that because of the lack of tab and macaroni and cheese in Portugal in the 1500s, that Magellan was probably about 4'8".
Well, this is definitely an issue because as depictions of the Patagonians begin to appear on maps, they are depicted as literally twice the size of their European, quote, discoverers. So they're just depicted as kind of giant savages with spears and bows and arrows and whatnots. They all have beards. And then little tiny Hobbit-scale European sailors and conquistadors are pictured next to them. And this is what happens in Regio Gigantum. Europe is delighted by the wonders that this new world affords. It seems like a land of endless possibility where anything is possible, including giants like those from myth. And over the following decades and even centuries, there are, it seems like at least a dozen more accounts of visitors to South America spotting these giant tribes.
What now?
And commenting on their large feet. It's kind of a Bigfoot style myth. And for a long time, the name Patagonia was thought to come from the Spanish word pata, meaning paw or foot or something. And we now believe that the origin comes from Prima Leon. So it may be that the word Patagonia itself kind of reinforced the idea that these were people with giant, because Patagon does sound like a word for, giant paw. I don't know what we would say there. Just a big old meaty hand or foot.
So where were they most recently sighted?
So all these are off the coast of the southern part of South America, what we would call Patagonia today, the southernmost provinces of what are today Argentina and Chile. And it's just expected, the people will routinely come back and say, yeah, we saw men that are 13 spans tall, which would be 9 feet, or even 14 or 15 spans tall. So 10 or 11 feet. These would be taller than Robert Wadlow, taller than any known human that exists today.
Are there large swaths of Patagonia that are not explored?
Are you hoping that to this day there are Patagonian giants hiding in the foothills?
I am hoping that.
It's a sparsely populated part of the world.
As a cryptozoologist, I'm always hoping that there's a chupacabra that's going to come out of the bushes at some point.
It's canon now that you're a cryptozoologist.
Well, for the purposes of this show.
You do have a Mothman crystal right here on your windowsill.
I didn't buy it.
Although I don't know if that
is.
was by choice, and I think it probably scares your daughter. So it becomes common in these stories to just receive knowledge that there's a bunch of tall men here, and the accounts get bigger and bigger, like, oh no, they're 10 feet. No, they're 11 feet. And in fact, as the British and French send out their various, did I say French?
The French, the British and French.
The French on the frontier. As they send out their expeditions and report eagerly back about these giants, the French begin to sniff that the British are just pretending to go giant hunting when really they have colonization and
they're whaling.
Well, they just want to stake out territorial claims to defeat the French, and they're just pretending to be interested scientists who love a good giant.
Typical.
Who among us does not love a good South American giant?
But who among us has not pretended to be a scientist in order to defeat the French?
I mean, you just pretended to be a cryptozoologist for no reason that I could ascertain at all. But even while these reports are coming in, we start to get our first indications that maybe this has all just been a Pliny-like game of telephone.
Yeah.
Francis Drake visits South America in the early 17th century, and when his nephew, who I believe is Drake the Rapper, writes up the expedition, he says, Magellan was not altogether deceived in naming these giants. Not altogether deceived.
Yeah, that's that kind of talk.
For they generally differ from the common sort of man, both in stature, bigness, and strength of body, also in the hideousness of their voices. Well, this is new information. But they are nothing so monstrous and giant-like as they were represented. There being some Englishmen as tall as the highest we could see. But peradventure the Spaniards did not think that ever any Englishman would come hither to reprove them, and therefore might presume the more boldly to lie. So, a little casual anti-Spanish racism there.
Sure.
So Drake is saying, now some of these guys are burly, but he's kind of adjusting expectations downward.
Right. He didn't immediately take 5 of them back to rugby and start a new team. Although I guess that's probably before the invention of rugby.
And this continues to happen as more and more, as the southern tip of South America becomes more and more explored. More reports come back saying, well, actually, they're pretty normal size. Well, actually, they're only about 6 feet. And as you point out, these poorly nourished European sailors of the time were probably all around 5 feet.
So are these the Tehuelche people?
Yes. Today, the Patagonian giants, kind of mysteriously spotted by Magellan et al., who later apparently disappeared from the record, are identified with the Tehuelche, an indigenous people in Argentina today. There are about 28,000 Tehuelche people who identify, indigenous people who identify as Tehuelche.
How tall are
in
they?
Argentina today? They are a tallish people. There is something called Bergman's law, a Bergman's rule, kind of a general law of anatomy that says in cold climates, a big body has more mass compared to surface area, and therefore is better able to hold on to heat. So in extreme climates, evolution often rewards the husky gentleman.
Well, that explains why the Dutch are so tall.
It's so chilly.
Yeah.
Well, it also explains polar bears. The world's largest land mammal lives in cold climates.
Right. Also, the polar bat is the largest bat.
Yes, as we all know. It does not explain the Dinka or Tutsi, now that I think about it. Bergman's rule apparently fails in sub-Saharan Africa.
Maybe it's also true of the hottest climate. It's weather extremes that produce tall people.
So the Tehuelche people are big, and maybe bigger than your average would-be conquistador.
Right.
And the Tehuelche have had kind of a sad history since then, like a lot of indigenous peoples. They were, the Argentines put them on reservations and so forth, and their language is not commonly spoken now.
Is it a mountainous territory?
Yeah, it's the It's the foothills of the Andes, and Patagonia does, include the southern tip of Argentina does include a very mountainous territory. But as early as 1767, plenty of people were doing measurements on the Tehuelche people. And according to Samuel Wallis in 1767, some of them were very tall. There was one that was 6'7", but he appears to have done a large study, and most of them were between 5 and 6 feet. He also mentions that their feet are remarkably small.
Weird. Which
means the other big-footed examples must have just been wearing big guanaco skin boots.
Maybe it was part of the now forgotten tribal custom that they always send the tallest guy out to meet new arrivals.
Or maybe he was the outcast, He was
just sitting there
he's on the beach pouring sand on his head because
he was staring at the sea going, no one loves me.
Everybody else has a real job. By the time Captain Fitzroy and the Beagle and Charles Darwin arrive, the measurements are down to 5'9" or 10. So again, tall by European standards of olden times, but very disappointing to anyone who was hoping that South America was full of these 10, 11 foot tall giants. Now, there's another possibility, though. You mentioned a hope that perhaps there actually were
chupacabras.
Yeah, there was a super tall race of South Americans.
Right.
That
I'm still holding out hope
that the first explorers found, but were not there. They gradually disappeared over the next 100 years. There is an American account from a man named Ned Chase, who lived in South America around the turn of the 20th century, who had heard of contemporary accounts of another tribe, different from the Tehuelches, who didn't get along with them, who hated them, and were much, much larger.
Oh.
They used stone tip arrows, and they did not use the kind of the bolo that you could use on a horse. They were pedestrians, apparently. But he had heard tales that, this was a race that had been hunted, enemies of the Tehuelches who had been hunted down. The whole tribe, the last of the tribe, had been caught by some Tehuelches in a cave near Gallegos and smoked to death there.
Ooh.
So in this account, there's another possibility, which is that the Patagonian giants were a real people, and they just got sparser and sparser. So European visitors started seeing fewer of them and more of the normal-sized Tehuelches until they were gone altogether.
Is there any archaeological record of the missing super tall Patagonians?
No, there are tales. There's folklore there of gauchos saying that they've seen valleys full of giant bones. Men with colossal skeletons. It seems straight out of Genesis. So there is an oral tradition of sites where, the caves where the tall giants made their last stand. So if you believe in them, and maybe they're still out there, I'm sure if you were a very tall Patagonian, maybe you would head for the mountains like Jeremiah Johnson and live a rugged, solitary life there. You're certainly physically well equipped for it.
I mean, it depends. I guess if your neighbors are trying to kill you and smoke you, but all they would have to do is get exposed to any media at any point and realize that they had that their height conveyed an intrinsic value, that they could end up, on an all-star team.
There's really a moral to that story. The Tehuelches just made them feel bad about themselves, and so they're all hunched down like Sean Nelson. They just needed to go to your doctor and hear about posture, and they'd still be alive today.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about how it is that the big ones, the Neanderthals even, they get outcompeted by the little ones
because they're dumber.
I feel like this all the time.
Saying this.
I'm constantly being outcompeted by the littler ones.
Is it because, have you ever been at a buffet table with kids? Ugh. They'll just they don't observe the line. They'll just duck ahead of you and grab a handful of hummus and run off.
They get their heads under the sneeze shields. and then we ended up dying of disease.
You need a different ecological niche. You need to be like the giraffe of the salad bar, eating the delicious leaves from the acacia canopy.
Well, if the little ones weren't just so good at climbing. And that concludes Patagonian Giants, entry 907.MT0627, certificate number 33392 in the omnibus. Futurelings, in the unlikely event that social media still exists in your era, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for our show are archived at Omnibus Project. You notice that Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram do not accentuate stature in the way that they profile users.
You think they should list people by height, or
Well, if you watch people across a broad spectrum on Instagram, you're not conscious of who's tall and who's not tall.
I don't even notice it in movies. Right?
Facebook,
I mean,
Twitter,
people
you
are
can't
like
tell
people
how
like
tall
Stallone's 5'6", and I get so angry. No, he's not, but he
like,
is.
if you meet someone in person, the first thing you register is their size.
Absolutely.
And yet, within the social media world, size is completely a non-factor.
Do you feel like this is a new utopia that makes everyone the same height, Bernie plan style, or do you think Facebook should give you a heads up? Hey, you need to know.
Well, it's just
he's very
interesting
short.
when you imagine a sort of world in which avatars are the way we interact with one another. I wonder, like when you see movies like Ready Player One, there's always a character that's really big, and a character that's like a raccoon that's been robot augmented.
Yeah, how's that going to work in the heads-up display if you've made yourself into a giant robot and then you walk into the grocery store? Like what?
Right. How's
that robot getting into the grocery store?
I don't know how that's going to work, right? If you're just normal size and you made yourself into a giant blue naked man.
If you make yourself 7 feet tall, people are always just going to be looking at the space above you where your head appears,
which is going to be strange.
That's fine, but they're gonna think you're gonna bang your head on an awning.
Yeah, right. You're always going to be looking up their noses. I wonder about that. I wonder whether avatarism will equalize size, or whether we'll just naturally pick an avatar that is the same size that we are.
You could probably get some kind of armature that will approximate the size you want to be. If you want to be smaller, you're going to have to amputate.
Well, you'll just have to carry your goggles around your neck on a gold chain, or wear them on the top of a very tall hat. I don't know. It's interesting. I wonder if. And I wonder if
the end of height.
The end of height.
This is going to be your book.
I wonder if we are headed toward a kind of as races begin to disappear with just the cross pollination of the future, whether also height will equalize.
Well, because it's so informed by economic factors, it would probably be good news if it did.
Everyone has access to Tab and macaroni and cheese, the two great nutritional conveyors.
I just watched Kramer versus Kramer, and Dustin Hoffman drinks 4 cans of Tab in that movie. Yeah, and he's very short.
Yes, he is short.
So I think the cyclamates must be stunting your growth. I don't think Tab is actually the miracle drug you're painting it as.
Dustin Hoffman didn't get access to Tab until he was already an adult.
It was too late for him?
You need to drink Tab as a child. You can enjoy Ken's Twitter witticisms at Ken Jennings.
Twitticisms.
I am on there also at John Roderick. just
making no claims for your own.
just laboring along.
That's not true. Your feed is a delight.
Oh, that's sweet of you to say.
You got very angry at people who are not into banana bread, and I believe that's the correct take.
Yeah, if you're like, I don't think banana bread is good, you can just take leave, sir.
I feel like once we have the avatars, like hot food takes should just result in death.
Well, now I do a lot of hot food takes.
Are yours correct, or are they right or
correct.
wrong?
Like, for instance, potatoes are garbage.
That's not correct. I heard brunch is bad.
Oh, brunch
from
is
a prominent Twitterian and a prominent gay American Twitterian who was anti-brunch. He's gonna be.
That's got to be reactionary. He's got to be reacting against brunch being categorized as a gay meal.
He's gonna be put in stocks by his people.
You can go to my Instagram account and see all of the fun, super curated things I do on Instagram that make it seem like I don't spend 9 hours a day sitting alone in my room staring at a spot on the wall. You can email us, and please do, at theomnibusproject@gmail.com. Our Facebook and Patreon groups are the Futurelings and people are having a variety of good experiences over there, masquerading as very tall Patagonians. You can mail us actual things, physical things, at P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington 98155.
I'm looking at some mail right now, by the way.
Oh, what do you got there?
Somebody who teaches a community college class on television game shows and wants me to call in.
Decline of American education right there.
That was my major, John. He wants me to call in at 9 a.m. Eastern time.
Any day.
Friday, 9 a.m. But can you imagine getting on the phone at 6 a.m. to talk about press your luck?
With his class?
With his class.
So they'd just be sitting in there and he'd be lecturing them on the $10,000 pyramid.
And then the phone rings.
He's like, hang on, I've got to get this. What teacher answers the phone in the middle of class?
Well, if you know it's me.
Well, how would he know it was you? You're just going to call him randomly.
Could you imagine at the end of this class, it's like, like the movie scene of the kids pick up their books and the teacher's like, remember, tomorrow, 30% of your grade is going to come from our test on classic concentration. Our friend Dawn also sent us this, the 2-envelope trivia game.
Oh, she likes this.
Would you like to play?
I guess so.
I don't know which of these has the money in it.
I won once and lost once, right?
You have, I think, yeah. And when you won, it was because I lost. I got a question
that's how
wrong.
It should always be. All right, so
in this one, you have to answer correctly.
I have a card with a bear and a deer, and there's a blue piece of paper. I'm unfolding it here. Jeopardy clue number 5: eating contests for $5.
Eating contests?
Eating contests.
I bet this guy teaches an eating contests class as well. This is, and look, mine
this is Dawn, right?
Mine is the no. I'm just thinking that my friend Jerry maybe also teaches a community college class on eating contests. I have the $5 prize right here.
This bizarre annual event held in Marshwood, England, attracts spectators and contestants from Australia, Canada, and more, leaving its contestants with purple, black, and sometimes blistered tongues. It's an eating contest.
Yes. What would you eat? I have the answer right here, so I already know it. What would you eat to give you a blistered purple tongue? In Marshwood, England. You have 30 seconds, contestants. Good luck.
What are nettles?
That is correct.
Hey!
What is the World Stinging Nettle Competition?
Yay! I get it. $5.
You just won $5. 5 American dollars.
People think that you're the trivia master of this show. But they don't realize that you are the trivia master.
No, it's because they've never talked to you about stinging nettle eating.
I have some skills.
And realizing the depth of your stinging nettle knowledge.
I was at a party with Ken the other day, and I said, yeah, people think that I should be on Jeopardy. And Ken said, ha! That's like people suggesting that I play guitar in a band. I was shamed. Slunk out of the room.
I guess I should have said, who are these people? Let's get these people up here.
Let's get who these people
these
are.
mythical people who are always... I feel like you are a potentially strong Jeopardy player.
I don't think so. I don't think I have the gift.
Do you think you're maybe in your prime? Do you feel like you're too old?
I think I would choke. I think my brain would freeze.
You didn't just there. You just had a few seconds to come up with the World Stinging Nettle Championship, and you nailed it.
Well, if you want to see me on Jeopardy, you're going to have to pony up, listeners.
Wait, they're going to have to pay.
We need to we need to get a uniform together. We need to get a trainer.
This is a Kickstarter?
We need to send me to the show.
You can't just show up and play.
Yeah, right. You have to
it's like the Boston Marathon. You got to win a local Jeopardy first.
You have to go out to Russia and train on the taiga.
That's exactly right. I have the taiga.
Please, if you enjoy the show, consider contributing to its production at patreon.com/omnibusproject. We greatly appreciate your support of the show on Patreon.
It is the reason the show still exists at this point.
It is.
Listeners, from our vantage point here in your distant past, we have no idea how long our civilization survived. Perhaps we'll all wander into the mountains like the mythical giants of Patagonia and be lost forever and possibly conflated with another lesser tribe. But we hope and pray that catastrophe may never come. If it comes soon, this recording on the time capsule, like all our recordings, may be our final word to you, in which case you should spend that $5 quickly, John.
I will.
But if Providence
I'll go buy
allows...
candy bars.
Providence allows. We hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.